I was only 6 months into my training as a paramedic when I got the call. Dispatch said it was a wellness check. She was in her late 80s and lived alone. Neighbors hadn't seen her in a few days, and there was a strange smell coming from her unit, apartment 3C. I was riding with my partner Dan, a guy who'd been doing this for over 10 years. He had that worn-out look people get when they've seen too much. But nothing ever seemed to shake him. Until that day. We arrived at the apartment complex around 10:30 a.m. It was a rundown building on the east side of town, peeling paint, rusted stair rails, and a smell like stale soup and mildew hanging in the halls. When we got to the 3rd floor, we both froze for a second. The smell. It hit like a wall. It was thick, putrid like spoiled meat left out in the sun. I gagged and covered my mouth with my sleeve, but Dan didn't flinch. He just muttered, "Dead for at least a couple days, maybe more." We knocked. "EMS, ma'am, are you all right?" There was no answer, but that heavy stench kept pressing against us like a presence. Dan called it in, and building management gave us the spare key. As soon as we opened the door, flies buzzed out in a wave. Hundreds of them. I felt them brush my skin and instinctively slapped them away. Inside, the place was dim. The curtains were drawn and layers of dust on everything. And there, in the center of the living room, sitting upright on a recliner, was the woman. Or what was left of her. Her skin had sunk against the bones, a sickly gray-green tint. Eyes half open, cloudy, her mouth was slightly ajar, like she'd been caught mid-sentence. Her hands rested gently on her lap, shriveled and still. I took a step forward. "Dan, I think she's..." But before I could finish, her hand twitched. I froze. Dan didn't move either. I looked at him, silently asking if he saw it too. He just nodded. We rushed over, checked for vitals, but she was long gone. But her hand had definitely moved. "Could have been rigor mortis," Dan muttered, trying to convince himself more than me. "Muscles contracting post-mortem." But his voice cracked just a little. We bagged her carefully. As I zipped the body bag up, I could swear I saw the corners of her lips curl upward, just a tiny bit. Dan and I didn't speak much after that. We loaded her into the back of the ambulance, and I climbed in with her while he drove. A few blocks in, I felt cold. Freezing, actually. Despite the summer heat outside, the back of the ambulance felt like a walk-in freezer. My breath fogged the air. Then I heard a whisper. Right behind me. I spun around, but what I saw was just the body bag on the stretcher. But the zipper was slightly undone, just a couple inches. I know I closed it completely back at the apartment. I didn't say anything. Just stared at it until we arrived at the hospital. The paperwork took hours. We left the hospital around 3 p.m., and by then, I was trying to push the weirdness out of my mind. Just stress, I told myself. Sleep deprived, still green. That night, though, that's when everything changed. I got home around 6 and crashed on my couch. I didn't even make it to the bed. I must have been out for a few hours when I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. I thought I'd heard someone knocking. 3 knocks. Slow and deliberate. I sat up, eyes adjusting to the dark. The knocking came again. But not from the front door. It was coming from my closet. I got up, grabbed the bat I kept by the TV, and walked over to it. I stood there for a second, every instinct screaming not to open it. But I did anyway. The closet was empty. Except that something wasn't right. The smell. That same rotting, death-soaked smell from 3C. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I slammed the door shut and backed away, gasping. I didn't sleep again that night. The next few days were worse. Wherever I went, I kept seeing flies. Not just one or two, but full swarms. In my car, my bathroom, even inside the fridge. I kept hearing whispers when I was alone. Quiet, unintelligible murmurs, like someone was standing inches from my ear. Dan told me to take a break and said I was spiraling. Maybe I was, but then something happened that even he couldn't explain. We were working another late shift, maybe 4 days after the 3C call. We were driving back from a hospital drop-off, both tired and silent. I looked into the side mirror to check behind us, just instinctively, and I saw her. The woman from apartment 3C. She was sitting in the back of the ambulance, right where the stretcher should have been, smiling. Her eyes were locked on mine through the mirror. I gasped and turned around so fast I nearly unbuckled myself. All I saw was an empty space. But when I looked back in the mirror, she was still there, still smiling. I started screaming. Dan had to pull over, shouting my name. I pointed at the mirror, but when he looked, she was gone. He didn't believe me. No one did. They said it was stress, hallucinations, and maybe early signs of PTSD. I know what I saw. I know what I keep seeing. It started like any other late-night shift. We got the call around 1:30 a.m., a non-violent psychiatric transport. The guy had been found wandering barefoot along the interstate, muttering to himself. The cops said he was calm, just out of it. We were told to bring him from the holding station to the county hospital's psych wing. I've done dozens of these. Usually, it's someone off their meds or just having a really bad day. But this one was different from the moment I laid eyes on him. He was sitting perfectly still in the chair when we arrived. He was late in his 30s, maybe, bald and pale skin, wearing a torn white t-shirt and pants soaked from the knees down. His feet were covered in dirt. Toenails cracked and blackened like he'd walked miles. He wasn't restrained, but he didn't move. "Hey there," I said gently, crouching a little. "We're here to get you somewhere safe, all right?" He didn't answer. The officer leaned in and whispered. "He's been like that for hours. Not violent, just creepy. Won't say his name. Keeps whispering weird stuff when he thinks no one's watching." We helped him into the ambulance. He moved like a puppet. I strapped him in on the stretcher, then sat across from him in the back while my partner, Eli, drove. The second the doors shut, it felt colder, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. I glanced at the AC vent. It was off. The man suddenly looked straight at me. I gave a polite nod, trying to stay professional. "We'll be there in about 20 minutes. You doing okay?" His mouth moved, but the words didn't make sense. It sounded like he was speaking backwards. No, not backwards, just wrong. A language I didn't recognize. Fast, lushed like he was reciting something. He turned his head slightly, not toward me, but toward the empty space beside him, like someone was sitting there. He whispered something else, then paused, then nodded, as if he was listening. That's when the lights flickered. Just for a second, but enough to make my heart jump. I tapped the wall behind me. "Eli? You all right up there?" His voice came through the intercom, a little distorted. "Yeah, what's up?" Lights just blinked. "Probably just a surge. This rig's older than sin," he said. When the lights came back on, the man was smiling. Not a friendly smile, more like the kind you see in nightmares. And his eyes were now locked on mine. I couldn't look away. Every instinct screamed at me to break eye contact, but I couldn't. It felt like something was rooting me in place. Then I saw it, a movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow directly behind the driver's seat. Only there was no one there. It looked like someone crouching behind Eli. I blinked and it vanished. The man started whispering again, faster now and more frantic. His head twitched like he was nodding, and then he started laughing. Not loud, not hysterical, just this low, breathy chuckle. Like someone told him a joke only he understood. "Hey," I snapped. "Cut it out." He stopped instantly and said the first clear sentence of the night. "You shouldn't have looked at her." I froze. "What did you say?" He just tilted his head. "She doesn't like to be seen." The lights flickered again, but longer this time. When they came back on, the seat next to him, the one I swore was empty, had a wet imprint, as if someone had just been sitting there. I scrambled to the back doors and slammed the emergency intercom. "Eli, pull over, now!" "What? What's going on?" "Just do it." He jerked the ambulance to a stop. The man on the stretcher didn't react. He just kept staring at the empty seat, smiling. I opened the back doors and jumped out, gasping like I'd been underwater. Eli came around from the front, confused. "You okay? What happened?" I couldn't explain it. I just kept shaking my head. "We need a supervisor. I don't think we should take him." Eli looked inside. The man was still there, calm as ever, but Eli's face went pale. "What the hell is that?" I followed his gaze. On the inside of the ambulance window, smeared into the glass, was a handprint. But not human because it was too large, too many fingers. And it was on the inside, near the empty seat. We called it in. The supervisor thought we were messing around at first, until they saw the footage. Security cams from inside the ambulance caught something. During the blackout moments, for 2 frames, there was a silhouette beside the patient. A faint outline, long arms and head cocked sideways. No facial features. Then it was gone. They still processed the man through psych. He didn't say a single word after that night. He just sat in his room, staring at the corner. He is either smiling or crying, and sometimes whispering to someone who isn't there. As for me, I still work EMS, but I don't ride night shifts anymore. I don't take psych calls if I can avoid them. And I never make eye contact with the patient until we're parked. The lights are on and doors open. We were already behind on calls when dispatch sent us to a major car accident just past Route 9. 2 vehicles. One flipped and one wrapped around a pole. By the time we arrived, fire crews were already working the scene. 1 dead on arrival, 1 critical. 1 passenger walked away with a concussion and a few broken ribs. We were told the driver of the flipped car, a man in his early 40s, was dead on impact. We didn't question it. Me and my partner, Tyrell, were told to transport the body back to the hospital. There were too many victims for the coroner's van to handle all at once. We zipped him into a black body bag and loaded him gently onto the stretcher. I remember the weirdest thing about him. His face was intact. His eyes were closed, like he was sleeping. No blood, no broken bones visible, just stillness. I rode in the back with the body while Tyrell drove. I don't usually talk to the dead. That's more of a personal rule, but something about this guy made me uneasy. I found myself glancing at the bag every few seconds, just to make sure it stayed zipped. 15 minutes into the drive, the temperature dropped suddenly. Like a vacuum sucked all the warmth out of the air. I could see my breath. Then came the sound. A zipper. Not loud, but faint and unmistakable. I turned my head slowly. The body bag was partially open, just a few inches, but I hadn't touched it. I knew I hadn't. I leaned in to check. Maybe the vibrations had tugged it down? Then the man's eyes snapped open. Before I could react, he sat up. His movements were stiff, like a puppet on strings. His head turned toward me. Bones cracked. His mouth opened, and in a voice that didn't sound human, he whispered, "Wrong body." I screamed so loud, Tyrell almost crashed the rig. The man grabbed my wrist. His nails were blue, his skin pale. Then, just as fast, he collapsed. Dead again. Flatline. Tyrell slammed the brakes. I stumbled out, gasping for air. I told him everything. He didn't believe me until he saw the bruise. 4 long, dark marks circled my wrist, exactly where the man had grabbed me. At the hospital, we reported everything. They checked his vitals again. Still dead. We handed him over to the morgue and left, but the nightmare was just beginning. The next day, I got a call from hospital security. They asked if I was the one who transported the guy from Route 9. I said yeah. Why? They asked if he had a twin. I said not that I knew of. They asked if I was free to come down. When I arrived, they walked me to the security room, showed me footage from the night before. Camera 1 shows inside the morgue. At exactly 3:21 a.m., the body on the table sits up. No twitch, no seizure, just slowly, mechanically rising into a seated position. He climbs off the slab, walks barefoot to the morgue door, and leaves. I started laughing, not because it was funny, but because it made no sense. The guard froze the footage and looked at me. "Here's the weird part," he said. "Check camera 2, the ER entrance." They switched views, and there he was, standing outside the hospital. The timestamp? 10 minutes after we'd dropped off his body. 2 of him, one in the freezer and one at the front door. I asked if it was edited. They swore it wasn't. Tech said the system hadn't glitched. They called the police, but the man had vanished, and the body was still lying in the morgue. But that wasn't the end. That night, Tyrell and I were on another run. Just a minor call, fainting spell at a grocery store. We were heading back when the radio crackled. Not a normal dispatch sound. It was warped, garbled, like the signal was buried in static. Then a voice came through, a voice I recognized. His voice. Unit 42, you took the wrong body. Wrong body. Then silence. We both looked at the radio. It wasn't even on. It had been off for 10 minutes. I couldn't breathe. Neither could Tyrell. He pulled over, and we just sat there, staring at the radio. No calls came in for the next hour, not a single sound. Later that week, the body disappeared. No record of transfer. No signature from the coroner's office. No trace on hospital logs. Just gone. I tried to forget. I took some time off. Considered quitting EMS altogether. But I still hear him sometimes. Through static, in alleyways, and also in my sleep. And sometimes, when I walk past mirrors, I see his face instead of mine. Just for a second, with his mouth moving, repeating the same two words. Wrong body. Not every shift ends with a save. Not everybody stays dead. And sometimes, what rides in your ambulance doesn't want help. It wants out. So the next time you see paramedics parked with their lights off, make sure you look closely. You might see an extra passenger in the back. One they never picked up. Until next time, keep your lights on.